Hey everyone, my name's Saketh. I'm an engineer here at Decodable, and in this demo, I want to take this opportunity to show you the Imply Polaris sync. I want to give a bit of background just about sort of the motivation for building this connector in the first place, and a big chunk of why we sort of embarked on this work in the first place was to basically make it really easy to interact with a managed Druid service. And so Imply Polaris is a real-time database that's built on top of Apache Druid. What Decodable already offers is a way to integrate with, or basically ingest data to Apache Druid tables if you want to basically roll your own Kafka and your own deployment of Apache Druid. Instead, what we've made it really easy to do is integrate with Imply's Polaris, which is a managed service, where you can basically take advantage of all the sort of neat features that Druid has to offer in a very easy sort of self-service way. And you can sort of not have to worry about things like database optimization, scale, resiliency, and security. And what Decodable takes care of is basically sending your cleaned, filtered, aggregated, and parsed data to Imply Polaris in a resilient and fault-tolerant and very performant way. So with that in mind, I'm happy to jump into the demo and sort of get started here. Let me just get my stuff. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. So what we're looking at right here is our documentation. If you want to read more about the Imply Polaris sync, feel free to navigate to this page. I'm not going to be going over this example that we have here. I'm going to be going over a different example. But what I will be doing is essentially following these 4 steps that I've listed here in our documentation. And I made another demo video that sort of walks through this example in particular. What I'll be doing for the purposes of this demo is streaming COVID-19 data to Apache Druid via Imply Polaris. And so if you look on our YouTube channel, you'll see another video that Hubert did where he streamed the same data to an open source Druid deployment that he set up. And he was able to create some pretty neat visualizations and location maps based on the data that was being generated. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to refrain from actually doing the visualization. I'm just going to show you how to get that data from the COVID-19 API as a source, feed it into Decodable, transform it and sort of parse it, and then basically sync it to Imply Polaris in this case. And I'm going to do that by basically following these 4 steps at a high level. So feel free to follow along in our examples repo. And you can see under Druid, we sort of updated this README to include instructions on how to basically put COVID-19 stats into Imply Polaris as well as into Apache Druid. And so to get started, what we can, and actually before I actually get started, I'll show you around this example repo. If we go into SQL and we go to the actual COVID cleanse, this is the pipeline SQL statement that we're basically going to put into Decodable. And Hubert made it really easy to basically use this sort of example and sort of set up all of the infrastructure on Decodable's and to actually get the entire end-to-end flow up and running. And he did that via this make file. So what we've added is this Polaris flow, which is a make target that will basically create a bunch of, it'll basically create 2 streams, an input stream and an output stream. It'll create a source connection and a sync connection, and it'll create the pipeline with this COVID SQL that we looked at right here to actually transform or it'll basically read in the data from the raw stream and output the cleansed data into the COVID cleanse stream, which will basically make it downstream to your Imply Polaris table. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and just follow these instructions in the README. I already pre-created a bunch of things like this env file, for example, and I've also created the table in Polaris as well. So we can see that's right here, COVID demo table. So let's go back to here and just follow the instructions for Imply Polaris, which is basically going to be as simple as making this Polaris flow target and then running this make run to actually run the Python script that's going to take data from the COVID-19 API, which is right here, and put it through Decodable all the way to Imply Polaris. I'll also just give a really quick shout out to the COVID-19 API, which is a free API for data on the coronavirus that's sourced from Johns Hopkins CSSE, which is a really great resource for getting all sorts of data about the spread of coronavirus worldwide. So yeah, thank you, Kyle. Let's get started. So I'm going to go over to my terminal. I'm going to go to the example repo that I've cloned, and I'm going to go into the Druid. Cool. So here I see this make file that contains that make target Polaris flow. So I'm actually going to just run that. And I've essentially already hooked it up to my deployment of Decodable. It basically uses the Decodable CLI under the hood to create a couple of resources, namely the raw stream, the cleanse stream, the pipeline, the source connection, and then the sync connection, which should be created right now. Cool. Awesome. So at this point, let me go into Decodable and show you what I've created, from this make command. I see COVID sync and COVID rest. Let's go into COVID rest. And from here, we can basically trace the whole lineage of all of the Decodable resources that we have created, starting with this, which is a REST source connection, which is actually going to listen for data that is coming in from that Python script that we're going to run. And that's where this is what is actually going to ingest the COVID-19 data into Decodable so that it can make its way downstream all the way to Imply Polaris through the following lineage. So you go from COVID rest to the stream COVID raw, which is basically going to be processed using a pipeline called COVID cleanse. COVID cleanse is going to output this data to, or the clean data to this stream called COVID cleansed. And then COVID cleansed is going to be actually written to via this COVID sync to Imply Polaris. So let's go ahead and enable all of these resources that we've created, starting with COVID sync, and we can also enable COVID rest. And then let's also enable the pipeline that's actually going to do the sort of parsing and the heavy lifting in the middle to actually allow us to have a stream with the correct schema that matches the schema that we've configured in our table. So at this point, all these resources are starting. So cool, we see like the sync connection is up and running. We should see, sorry, the source connection is up and running. We should see the sync connection also transition at some point in this pipeline as well. So once I see that all of these things are up and running, what I'm going to do is go back to my terminal and actually run the script that's going to pull data from the COVID-19 API and write it to Decodable. And then we'll see how the data sort of propagates from there. And my goal is to see that data appear in our Polaris table. So let's give it a second here. Cool. This looks like it's running. This looks like it's running. Awesome. So again, let's go back to our source connection, and let's then go back to our terminal, and let's run make run, which is going to hit Decodable, and I should expect to see a 200. Yep. Awesome. So at this point, some data should have been put into Decodable, and we can see that right here. We see that the schema that this stream has sort of needs to be cleaned up before it ends up in Polaris. And so it's going to output to this pipeline. This pipeline has a couple of input and output metrics, so you know that it's doing some work. And it's going to output to the COVID cleanse pipeline, which basically contains the ID, country, et cetera, essentially matching the schema that we've configured our Polaris table with, which is going to actually be written to the Polaris table via this COVID sync, Imply Polaris sync connection. And so let's go back to our table, and we see that the number of rows is changing. We see that data is being written to our Imply Polaris table. And from here, we can go into the SQL, and we can, maybe you can just like select, let's just say the first 10 that we see from our COVID demo table. And here we see these are just like the first 10 entries that most recent entries that we've written to our Imply Polaris table, COVID demo table in this case. And from here, we can enable downstream dashboards or any sort of visualizations in real time using the neat functionality of Imply Polaris, which is powered by Apache Druid under the hood. Cool. So hopefully in this demo, you got a pretty good idea of how to use Decodable to feed data, your parsed, filtered, aggregated, analyzed data through Decodable to Imply Polaris. And as always, we're open to feedback on this connector and on the product in general. So feel free to just hit us up in our Slack channel and in our Slack community. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.